Welcome to USA Basketball's Youth and Development series on player development philosophy. I'm Jay Demings. I'm the Youth and Sport Development Director here at USA Basketball. And throughout this series, I'm going to be joined by USA Basketball's Coach Development Director, Don Showalter.
Thanks, Jay. It's an opportunity to be on, and I know that we're going to give a lot of good things for coaches to take away from this.
I think so. And for our audience that's listening today, Coach Showalter is a 10-time USA Basketball gold medalist winning head coach for our junior national team program. And he's also been a high school basketball coach for 42 years prior to joining USA Basketball in a full-time capacity. So again, Coach, thanks for joining us. The way I'd love to kick off here is just by talking a little bit about your journey, sharing with the audience your experiences prior to becoming a full-time staffer with USA Basketball. Just take the audience through a little bit of your coaching journey from how you started to how you ended up coaching on our national team program.
Yeah, I actually get that question asked a lot. I went to a 4-year NAIA school, Wartburg College, graduated from there, played basketball at that level. And then right out of college, I was a head coach at a small high school in Iowa for a couple years, and then moved on to another high school, a little bigger high school in Iowa for 8 years. And then I went back to my alma mater, which I said I would never do, but I did, and had a great experience there with family and being able to coach a lot of the kids that I really knew growing up as well. So I was there for 28 years. And then I ended up at Iowa City High, which was my last stop, which was a very diverse school who had great athletic tradition, but not much basketball tradition. So that was a real challenge, but we did a great job, I think, assistants and everybody in our program to really get that program to the level that we thought we were competitive at and really needed to do. So 42 years of high school coaching, and during that time, I started with USA Basketball back in 1998 at the Hoop Summit. And Milt Newton at the time, who's a GM now for the Milwaukee Bucks, was working with USA Basketball, and I got to know him, and that's how I kind of got started with USA Basketball. He asked me to coach the Hoop Summit, which I did, and the coaches will recognize the name of Dirk Nowitzki, which we played against, and he was, at that time, nobody really knew much about the foreign players, the international players, but we did a really good job against him. He only scored 32 points and had about 25 rebounds in that Hoop Summit game. So that was his takeoff point for the NBA. And then from then on, we used to have some USA Basketball festivals that we had kids come in for. LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul were all part of our festivals in the early 2000s. And then FIBA started the U16, U17 programs in 2009. And USA Basketball had asked me to coach those, which I did through 2018. Many of those years I was also, of course, high school coach in Iowa. So that's kind of my pathway. And it's been a great experience. I started working full-time with USA Basketball on the youth side in 2016. My first project really was our youth basketball curriculum, which I did before I started full-time with USA Basketball. But now I'm Director of Coach Development with USA Basketball, and I really enjoy that position. It keeps me involved with basketball, which of course I love.
Well, that's great. And I think, we pride ourselves on trying to get most things right here, but I think one of the things that we don't get everything right, but one of the things we got right is bringing you on in a full-time capacity and tapping into your experiences in order to develop a framework for proper player development, which is really what we're here to talk about today. How to take a young player through the pathway of proper skill development. A, to make them a better basketball player, but B, and maybe more importantly, is to make them a better person. And so, in 2014, right before you started with us full time, we developed a framework of a model or a guide, if you will, in order to take players through the appropriate levels of the game. Why do you think it's important to have a framework? And throughout your coaching career, what have you seen to sort of dictate your philosophy on why it's important maybe not to take a player, advance a player too quickly through their development?
Yeah, that's a great point. And when you develop a curriculum, you develop from the ground level up. So um, we really think that building a framework, starting with players who are really young, who really don't know much about the game, is where you start, and then you kind of have to know where the player is in their experience with basketball, and at what level, skill level they are, and I think that definitely creates a better curriculum. It creates a much easier ladder, so to speak, of how to get players developed uh, to where they're very confident in their abilities. One of the things I think is really important is that we look at players that are young and how do we develop them to enjoy the game. I mean, they have to love the game, and part of that is what are the things that we do from the aspect of baskets and balls, and to have them have a fun experience. Well, if you have a young player who's 7 or 8 years old and they have a very difficult time shooting at a 10-foot hoop with a regular size basketball, size 7 basketball, they're going to become frustrated and many times drop out of the game. And we find out that a lot of the reasons that kids stay in the game, not only basketball but athletics, is for fun. And so if they have fun and they can perform skills at a fairly decent level, then they're going to stay with it and love the game more. So the first level that we really look at is where the kids are at in their experience, and what do we have to do to make them love the game, and of course keep the game safe for them as well. Those are some of the things that I think are really important in developing a player.
We talked about this, and keeping the game fun, right, that happens at all levels. I mean, we're going to go into a little bit later in the series about our player curriculum and sort of the 4 levels of development that we think are important. But just from a general experience, like, has your experience been, even at the national team or the junior national team level, that it's still important to players to have a good time when they're playing the game?
No question. I mean, I think that goes for in our own experiences. If we have fun and enjoy what we're doing, we're going to do a much better job of it. And we're going to actually, I tell coaches that, the practicing an hour or 2 a week probably is not going to do a lot to develop a player's abilities and skills. But if they love the game and you make it fun for them, they're going to develop their skills outside of that time frame in which you have them. And so they may come to your practice for an hour, but then they may go home on their own driveway and play for an hour or 2 or 3 because the game is fun. They love the game, and that's how they develop their skills much more rapidly than if they just come to your practice and that's the only time they get a chance to develop. But even our junior national team, you can tell the guys that, and for the most part they all do, but really love the game because they spend extra time on the skill level. They want to get better, and they want to reach another level. So without a doubt, I think having fun, keeping it safe are really things that will help a child, a young player, get better.
Exactly. And we talked about our guidebook and how we came up with that in 2014. And in particular, sort of the pathway that young people, or all people, really experience the game. And our pathway and our philosophy is designed to keep kids and players in the game for life. And so I'm going to go through a little bit of that here and just talk about, it's direct from the guidebook, but we'll also put a graphic up on the screen here and kind of talk through each of the stages. And so we have 7 stages that we utilize to sort of articulate what that pathway looks like in a young person's life. And obviously we all start the game. So our first introduction to the game is that we start it in a different fashion. So some of us are first introduced to basketball in school, some of us as toddlers with a toy hoop. In either case, this introduction sparks our interest in the sport. How did you get started? Well, call back, and whether it's you or players you coached or your family members, how did they start experiencing the game?
Yeah, I think, as coaches, we're coaching because somebody has given us a love for the game. We're in basketball, whether we're an official or whatever, and somebody has given us that love for the game. And so I think we all can think back to coaches that we've had growing up, whether it be, elementary school level, or maybe it might have been a parent or an uncle, whatever, that really kind of made you love the game because of maybe of their passion, but also they made it so much fun. And I look back on several coaches I had as a young player that made the game so much fun and really challenged me a lot in what we were doing. But until until recently, you never had there was never a direct pathway to becoming better. And I think that's what our curriculum does. So now we give some education to coaches on that pathway and really how to start young players in the game of basketball and how to keep them involved and how to keep them learning with what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And if you have fun when you first experience the game, you might look for opportunities to explore. So we talk about the exploration phase, which is a big one in my opinion, because often that's when we're entered into our local basketball league, or we're registered for instructional lessons, or maybe we start out by going to a summer camp. But we certainly begin to play the sport with friends, hopefully in our driveways, our neighborhood, at our playgrounds, maybe pick up games at school. So we think that exploring opportunities to play are vital to that continued interest. And before we maybe just talk about that a little bit, and maybe some ideas that you would have to get a child interested in the game in some different, shapes and forms.
Yeah, that's a great question because as I have two kids of my own and a boy and a girl, but they were always over at the gym with me as a coach, and so they were just kind of brought up to love the game. And I think as a parent, sometimes you can over push your child into something that they don't really have a lot of fun with yet. But I think as a parent, if you let them kind of find out what they like and give them opportunities. So as a parent, hey, let's go out and shoot baskets. Let's go work on some dribbling skills, and then let the youngster, the young player figure out, hey, this is kind of a fun game. I think that they'll love the game more that way as well, as opposed to maybe a parent who, forces their son or daughter to play 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day when they really don't want to at that age yet. So you talk about starting one. I think the first thing you have to do is have them really in it for the love of the game, and then you can take that love of the game and expand that and give them other opportunities and show them other opportunities and drills and skills that would be helpful to them once they have that love of the game.
And then during that exploration phase, we kind of organically move into the learning phase, where we develop a basic understanding on how to play. You mentioned that basketball is often learned initially from parents or guardians, but then they obviously join leagues where there are local coaches, sometimes parent coaches, obviously, and they learn from those types of coaches. And to me, that's where we have a great responsibility as parents and as coaches to keep the child in the game, because a great experience could keep them in the game, and like you mentioned, a poor experience could make them either choose another sport or or worst case, drop out of sports altogether. So talk a little bit about that learning phase, and maybe the importance of the role of the parent and the coach in keeping the child active in the game?
I think this is probably, to me, it's really an important part of that pathway, because now the player is wanting something a little more than just a driveway type of skill development. I mean, they want to be involved with the team. They may want to be involved socially with other players at their own level. So the learning stage is really important, I think, to give them that opportunity. I always I like to tell coaches that, and parents as well. All right, now if your son or daughter goes to a club team, now it's your time to step away, and it's a time to trust the coach that they have, whether you agree with everything or not. But that now the player can learn what they really like about the game. They can get a good overall picture of what it is to play with teammates that they can compete with, and so I think that learning stage is really good. I think sometimes parents overlook that's probably a stage where they need to step back a little bit. Obviously, parents coach teams at that stage too, so they have to be aware of all the other players on that. So again, the learning stage, I think, now is expanding the youth, expanding the boy or girl into a higher level of play, being with teams, being with players of their own abilities.
Great. I know episode 2, we'll talk about this later, but we'll look into the role of the coach in that learning phase as well, and why that's so important. But now in a perfect world, you have everybody in the participation stage, which in our graphic we demonstrate as a larger stage, because this is where players are taking part in the sport at all levels, whether it be, like you said, the club or the recreation level, structured play, travel teams, school teams, but also participation can include non-structured play without coaching, pickup games, playing in the driveway, or perhaps just at an outdoor court. Do you feel that unstructured play is still an important part of the game?
Absolutely, and I think that we've probably parents and coaches have really probably gotten away from unstructured play. Um, as I talk to players themselves, they have gotten away from unstructured play. Um, we deal a lot with some of our elite athletes at the USA basketball level, and I see them as sometimes their development is only related to, can I get in a gym? Do I have a coach type of thing? Where I would say 10 or 15 years ago, and Jay, I'm sure you saw this as well, but kids would go out in a playground and just play, and they would organize themselves into teams, and that's a great way to participate, and it's a great way to learn how to play the game. I use specific examples of the Rucker Park in New York, or where people went to play a lot, and now you go to those places and there just isn't a lot of free play. And I think that has developed a lot of players in the past that a lot of players today miss out on. Just going down to the park without any structure, without any coaching, and figure out how to be the best player they can be. And when they do that, I think they learn things a little bit quicker, and they have that's a big part of the fun part of the game as well.
Exactly. And if it all works out in an ideal world, we'll all still participate in the game for life. But before we talk about our basketball for life model, I did want to switch gears a little bit and talk about what we call the performance and the excel phases of the game, which in the perform and excel phases, this is where players come out of the participation phase and they advance into the higher levels of basketball. So, it takes a lot of hard work, it takes dedication, it takes natural talent. If you combine all of those things, you may perform basketball well enough to become a very good high school player or a college athlete. whether it be a scholarship level, non-scholarship level, or even go on to play professionally. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just and we'll put a graphic up on the screen for those that can tap into the visuals here, just to talk a little bit about what that pathway looks like in reality. And so we have what we call a participation pyramid. And in that pyramid, Coach, the majority of the 60 million people that play basketball just in the United States alone mostly play the game just for fun. And those of us that are 18 and older, there's still about close to 40 million people that are playing on Saturday morning pickup leagues and women's and men's pickup leagues during the week, and just playing with our children out in our driveways or what have you. Obviously, a lot of kids are just playing in rec leagues for fun. About a little less than 30 million people, ages 6 to basically 18 years old, as you can see either on our pyramid here on the screen, or you can go to our guidebook and find this participation pyramid from some stats that we ran 3 years back. But going back to the excel and the performance phase, there's a very small number of people worldwide, let alone in the United States, that will advance to those excel and those performance stages. Now, the number of people that think they should be in those stages, Coach, right, are probably pretty large.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah. So, and I know what you do at the national team level is the very top of the participation pyramid. And it is literally the 1% of the 1% of the best that there are. And same on the women's side, obviously. I know you don't coach on the women's side, but I know you are involved in programming for women as well. So, talk about maybe the difference between what it's like to play for fun and for the pure joy of the game, and then the difference between what that's like to when you start playing at the scholarship level and then above, even into the professional and the national team ranks.
Yeah, I think as we look at that as our pathway, once you participate in the game, and then you kind of figure out that I may be pretty good at this as a young man or young lady, and then they continue their pathway through high school, and then so now that pyramid gets a little bit narrower on this, because the players that go on to high school still want to participate, they want to excel, but there's going to be some differences in ability, playing time, in what the coach that they have thinks of their abilities. So I think they want to excel, but now as they get a little more to that point, they're going to figure out, here's really where I can structure my basketball abilities to be the best that I can be, whether that be maybe a starter up to high school level, or maybe a sixth man or 10th man. And the participation level, I think, is really important, because now as you get to the high school level, there are many players, and we've all seen this as coaches, who start out at the 9th grade level and maybe don't even hardly make the team. I mean, Michael Jordan got cut as a JV player. So, but they participate, they continue to participate, they continue to develop their skills as they get older, from 9th grade through, or ages 14 through 17. And once they hit a little higher level, maybe their body develops to where they can do the skills better. Maybe they have a little bit better understanding of the game for whatever reason. So they can really develop their game. And now all of a sudden, instead of being somebody who just participates as a 9th grader, now they're excelling as a 16 and 17-year-old at that level, and they're starting for their high school team, or they're playing a lot for their high school team. So that's one area that I think is really important. But the kids who still don't reach that level of playing time with a club team or with a high school team, they still want to participate. They still want to be a part of a team. It's still fun for them. So they go ahead and continue their basketball through their high school years, through the age of 17. Now, you flip it over to the other side, there's some that really perform at a real high level. And, we see those with USA Basketball, but they're participating at a younger level, and they know, they feel real confident in their skills. People tell them how skilled they are. So now it's not a matter of just performing at a level for their U16, U17. They know that down the road they have the ability, and they pursue their goals of playing maybe at the college level, for sure, at some level in college, D1, D2, or D3, NAIA, junior college. But also they have ideas of, maybe I'm good enough to play at the professional level, whether it be NBA, WNBA, international level. So that participation level really has a lot to do with going on to excel and perform, because if they continue to participate, they find out where they can probably go with their abilities.
Sure. And we're all eventually going to enter a phase in our lives, whether we advance to play at the higher levels or just continue to simply participate in the game, where basketball, playing wise, might come to an end for us, or by and large come to an end for us. But we're hoping to keep players in the game and people in the game, what we call basketball for life, so that they can go on. And you do see this, I'm sure, as well, where they can take part now as coaches and trainers and administrators. They become fans of the game. They become officials or referees. And then obviously we hope they become parents of children who will go on to go back to that starting phase, right? And then it repeats itself. And we think that that's what makes sort of this roadmap an important piece of the puzzle. And really, it's what keeps basketball the most popular sport in our country. So I am going to ask you a couple of questions, because if we do feel that it's important to keep kids in basketball for life, or as they grow up as adults, to keep them involved in the game, I want to talk about who's responsible for ensuring that kids are having fun and that it's safe and that it's developmentally appropriate. So maybe talk a little bit about the parent. And I know that's one that comes up a lot. And, parents can be difficult on one hand, but they're also the group that drives the kids these days to the games, or even to the playground. So what can the parent do, and what's their responsibility to make sure that kids are having fun and staying in the game?
Yeah, that's a very broad question, Jay. And I think as coaches, no matter if you're coaching 7, 8-year-olds, or you're coaching 16, 17 or older, parents are a very important part of your program. I think coaches sometimes tend to think that they don't have to communicate with parents, or that parents are not a vital part of their program. But I think those coaches find out that if they have parents that are well versed in their programs, they're going to be much more backing what goes on with the coach and their program. So I think parents, one thing, it's got to be, it's a two-way street between parents, coaches, and players. And as a parent, and I'm a parent of a son who played for me throughout high school. And also I'm a parent of a daughter who I coached from all the way from 7-year-olds up through 13, 14 until the high school, until she started high school. But yeah, so as a parent, I'm looking at how other parents see the game. And other parents see the game through the eyes of their son or daughter, because they're really not watching the whole team much. They're watching their son or daughter play the game. And when we all go to games, no matter what level, we hear parents, yell at their son or daughter, some negative, some positive things as well. But I think a couple things that parents need to keep in mind is what is going to keep your son or daughter in the game. That's really important. So if you are a negative parent, just like a negative coach, that your son or daughter may decide, you know what, this game isn't fun anymore, and I'm not going to play it. So I think as a parent, you have to visualize, what am I going to do to help my son or daughter keep loving the game? And a couple things I always said as a parent, um, we never had a coming home after a game. It was never like, how many points did you score, or how the game went that way. It was always, hey, did you have fun? Did you have a good time? Now let's go out for ice cream type of thing.
Sure.
Win or lose, you never talk about the win or loss type of atmosphere it's created. You always talk about, hey, first question, did you have fun? And if they can say yes, we did have fun, then I think that's a huge part of keeping the kids in the game. So, and coaches, we can do this for a couple hours. How coaches to keep parents part of your program, but parents are very willing. I found out very willing to help in any way they can, and I think coaches need to tap into that.
And we're going to spend a good portion of this overall series talking about the role of the coach and their responsibility and what they can do, given that we believe at USA Basketball, the coach has a really strong impact on a child's love for the game, or not, right, if they end up leaving the game. I did want to mention the role of the organization as it relates to ensuring fun and safety and appropriate environments. And so we do believe that as a parent, you should look for organizations that fit your philosophy on the experience that your child wants to have in the game. And for me, I came from a world before I joined USA Basketball where I was involved in a club program that was at a pretty high level. And so those players that participated in our club program also, their goals had to match the high level goals of the club program. But I've also been in organizations where the goal of the basketball league, right, was just to have fun and to make sure everybody played equal playing time. And both of those ends of the spectrum to me are extremely important on the future of the game. So maybe just talk a minute about your experience and how you've had high school programs, right, that have had feeder youth leagues. Talk about why it's important for the organizations to be on the same page in developing players that want to stay in the game for life.
Yeah, again, good question. Maybe I'll start, Jay. I'll ask you, the different organizations you have been. Has there been a difference in the goals of that organization that you've been a part of? I've been mostly part of organizations basically from the school standpoint, but you've been part of them from the club standpoint.
Yeah, on the club standpoint, I've seen both, and we saw the tide sort of turn about 20 years ago, where when you participated in a club program, you had to be a pretty high level player in that perform or excel stage that we talked about earlier. Now, club basketball, and I think this is a good thing, although we can have a whole segment about whether or not pay to play is good or not for the game. But club basketball has taken on more of a participatory aspect to it, in the sense that once your youth league ends, let's say in February or March, you can go find an appropriate level club program now to continue playing throughout the year. One club might only play a couple of tournaments throughout the spring or summer. Another club might play a dozen or more tournaments. And so you have to find the right fit too. A good example and a good contrast would be what we do here at USA Basketball. You can't get more polarizing than what we do here. You can take part with some of the players that you've coached, right, at the highest possible level of the game, competing internationally, and conceivably a great percentage of those players are going to go on to get paid to play professionally, and a few of those will make our senior national team. But on the other end of the spectrum is what we do through some of our youth programming. We have kids that are picking up a ball for the first time. So we serve a very broad, I would argue that we serve the broadest community of those playing the game. But yeah, I think it is about fit and your responsibility as a parent, a coach that's entering a team into a tournament, right? Or if you're an organization and you're starting up for the first time, whether it be at the club level or you're an event operator, who do you want to serve? And that's why I think this pathway is really important, because you need to figure out, if you're trying to make money in the game as an event operator, you probably want to serve that participatory level, because you're going to have more participants there at that level than if you were just serving, elite level club teams. If you're a parent, and you want to find a league to put your child in, and you want them to have a good experience, well, those elite club teams probably aren't going to be a great fit for you. So I think it all is relative, but I think it all is relevant at the same time to each other. So finding the right fit is important. But what I would say, though, is what do you say to that parent or even the coach that see this pyramid and they sort of quote unquote double down in an attempt to get their player to the top? So they say, listen, for my child to be really good, they have to play 100 games over the summer. Is that one way to look at it? Like, how much does natural ability and just sheer athleticism and stuff eventually take over? And what is your advice to parents that are trying to sort of pay their way to get their child to the top, or maybe put them through things that aren't exactly healthy or safe for them?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I see this. I see this a lot more than I would like to admit. But I think people want to put I think players on a fast track, so they skip steps. So we're doing skill work, but we're going to skip some of the skill work to get right on to shooting 3-point shots, for instance, or being a 3-point shooter. So we're skipping steps to do that. And when we skip steps and think that the players are going to fast track their way to become better skilled, actually they level off, and they probably don't like the game as much because they don't have the success they needed to. And I know we'll talk about that later in progressive coaching. But parents and coaches who see a player that has some ability and they're going to try to fast track him to an elite player when they're not ready to get to that level, I think really does a disservice to the player. And then all of a sudden the player finds out, golly, I'm not certain I liked this as much as I used to. Not only to play the game, but develop in his own game. So I think there's those progressive steps that coaches and parents need to take, and allow that player to then be improve and get better on their own, as well as under some structure. Seems like every player has trainers nowadays, and I look at a lot of the trainers, and they basically teach the player how to do dribbling skills, shooting skills, but with the ball in their hands. And so, all right, let's expand that a little bit. And what do you do when you don't have the ball in your hands? So all that has to do with that the skill, allowing that player to improve to get to maybe to an elite level. Now, whatever that elite level is, might be a starter on a really good high school team, or might be then going on to playing Division II or Division III college level, or might be going on to play Division I level. So I think that's really a kind of a situation where the coaches and parents need to step back and don't try to rush a player to high development real quickly. It takes time, no question about it.
Well, that's great. I know in episode 2, we're going to look a little further into the role of the coach in that process and the importance that they play. We're also going to specifically discuss what USA Basketball, and I know you've talked about this, Coach, the 4 C's of development. And a lot of that can be applied both on the court and off the court. And we call our 4 C's the importance of imparting communication, choices, comfort zones, and then the aspect of competing into the game of basketball and into the game of life. So I'm looking forward to going over that with you next week in episode 2. I think the moral of our episode here, if the takeaways are right, it's to allow players to enjoy the game, use proper progression to keep them in the game, hopefully for life in some aspect, like we mentioned, as a coach or administrator or an official, or just to play for fun. But then our collective job, I think, is to keep people in the game for a longer period of time in order to promote the game, grow the game, elevate the game at all levels. And I know it's given you so many great experiences, and you've met so many great people, and you've had such a great journey, and that journey's continuing. And I know you want to see that for many other people.
Yeah, no question. I think those of us that are involved in basketball or even any athletics or sports, we have a real passion for that, and you like to relay that passion to players, and then players, after they get out of playing days, what can they do? I think coaches are really going to enjoy our next session when we talk about the 4 C's, Jay, just because I think it's going to give them a really good idea of how to create a better basketball player and better people.
And we're looking forward to that, Coach. Coach Showalter, thanks for joining us today. For everybody out there, we're looking forward to providing some great information for you throughout this series and throughout all of our offerings at USA Basketball. So we encourage you to go to usab.com to check out those offerings and what we have for you. If you have any questions or items that you'd like to see, or topics that you would like to see us discuss in either a podcast or future offerings, please email us at youth@usabasketball.com. That's YOUTH, youth@usabasketball.com. And we look forward to continuing this learning journey with you all.